Admit it. You expected your guests to act like you. You expected cleaners to be professional, contractors to be honest, and hot tubs to just work. Now you realize it's not all sunshine and 5-star reviews. That means you're in the right place. This is the community where we talk about the gross, awkward, and operational messes, as well as the real strategies that help you keep going instead of quitting. Because this is bigger than bookings. It's about building something real, something sustainable, something your kids can be proud of. Welcome to STR Problems, Strong Solutions. Let's get right into today's question. I think you're going to like this one. So, Ravi wrote in, and he adds in a lot of detail, but then I ask a few more questions. So, hi Jeremiah, my wife and I love our cleaner. She's been taking care of us and making our rental a priority for almost 2 years now. Guests complain about the cleanliness, and at first I thought they were just being picky, but then I'm not so sure. We want our cleaner to just pay attention to the details like she did for the last 2 years, but we do not know how to bring it up without hurting her passion. Should we just find a new cleaner? It hurts me to think of firing her. She's been so devoted, but the guests sent me photos. I'm even considering selling instead of talking to her about this. There were folded socks under a bed. Another guest found 2 loose pills under a nightstand. A third guest said that there was hair in the bedding, and a fourth guest complained that there was feces in the toilet in a half bath in the basement. Each guest was asked for pictures, and each photo was surprising to see what it could have been missed by someone who has been delivering 5-star reviews for such a long time. Each guest was asked for pictures, and each photo was surprising for us to see that it could have been missed by someone who has been delivering 5-star reviews for such a long time. And these 4 events happened between Thanksgiving and Martin Luther King Jr. weekend. Thanks, Ravi. So I had some questions. I emailed Ravi back. I said, hi, Ravi, thank you for your question. I would love to get into it on the show. Would you mind if I ask a few questions before I give you my response? Does your cleaner send you photos after each service? If so, how many, and are they time-stamped? Is your house in the same condition it was 2 years ago? I mean, does the paint, flooring still look to be the same condition? The cabinets are still in perfect working order, stuff like that. Have you updated your pictures for your listing recently? And have you ever given your cleaner the impression that she's not perfect? Has her rate for the clean ever changed? Thanks. So he wrote back with some answers. He said, hi, Jeremiah. She used to send us like 15 pictures after each clean, but I think that was more of an opportunity for us to show us how she was trying things with the bedding or the towels. She sends pictures of damage or when a guest leaves the house really unclean, then pictures of it cleaned up. We, of course, tell her how wonderful she is whenever we get photos, positive reinforcement. The paint job wasn't new 2 years ago, but there have been some touch-ups since. I would say it's still in the same condition. The carpet on the steps and the hallways got worse, but that's not the fault of the cleaners. I've been meaning to call a steam cleaner for the carpets. Do you think that has something to do with her attention to detail? The cabinets have taken some damage, but not bad enough to replace any of them. Her rate is still the same, and no, we never told her that guests complained. Looking forward to your input. So, Ravi, the reason I asked about the condition of the house is because guests typically only complain when there's more than one negative thing that they noticed. They also complain if there's one really big thing, or they complain when they're trying to con you for a credit. But let's discuss the credit situation in another episode. In this situation, I don't know if the guests got a credit, if they were asking for one, but I don't want to go there because I really like your question about how do we approach this with our cleaner. It is a complicated, difficult kind of relationship, especially for somebody who's not used to managing others. Even if you are a middle-level manager, this is still a different power dynamic. So we tend to look at it differently. So the guest experience, it's a good experience as long as they feel like they're getting a greater value than what they paid for. As soon as the guest starts feeling like, they were tricked or something's not what they were expecting and it's a negative, the guest experience turns bad. And when that happens, they sometimes go looking for problems because they're trying to get that value back. If they feel now, after seeing your house in person, that they overpaid for it, they're going to look for other things like damages. They're going to sometimes plant stuff so that they can get some of that value back. That way, things are going back to being balanced. And so that's why I asked if the condition has changed over the last 2 years, is because you might be getting negative guest experiences now because of some condition that exists in a house. Could be the flooring. It could be, some scuffs on the wall. These things are often noticed subconsciously, but when a guest arrives and they start thinking that this house is different than what they booked because they're looking at photos from 5 or 6 years ago. I know not your case, but they're looking at old photos of landscaping. There might be snow in the picture, but they're not there when it's snowing out. Or there might be flowers, but it's not springtime when they arrive. They just get there and they're expecting something nicer. So when your photos get old, the guest might get surprised by the condition, and it could even be like the differences in the paint color or the condition of the flooring or the landscaping or even bedding. But if they were surprised when they arrived, they're much more likely to leave a negative review or to give you a hard time about something that they might find while they're there. So it's one of those factors that kind of influences what you're describing, which is for guests identifying issues. Now, that value dynamic is actually true also for cleaners. So it's true for other service providers like your cleaner. So rarely does something stay put. It's either growing or it's dying. Second law of thermodynamics. Thermodynamics. I think I said that right. So relax. I was a math teacher, not a physics teacher, but I did take physics, so no excuse. If your cleaners are good, then they're turning down business or they're raising up their rates. This can lead to them being too busy or prioritizing other cleaning jobs where they make more money. You used to get her A plus efforts in the beginning, but now she feels like she's underpaid for your job. Either that or she's stretched a little too thin with the other houses that she's picked up. This is also another very common situation in the cleaning world. So, the timeline that you mentioned is also a very hectic time for cleaners since there are some major holidays. Now, this might not be true if you're in a primary summer market, but in my area, the Poconos, Thanksgiving is usually very busy, but then Christmas to New Year's is also crazy, and then Martin Luther King Day. So, what you end up with is a lot of houses to clean after cleaners are trying to look for jobs in September and October and November because things are slow. Now all of a sudden they've got those extra jobs and they don't have enough people to handle it. So they're stretched really thin in those situations. Now that might not be the case for your cleaner, but it might be as well. So Ravi, I'm also concerned about the photos. 15 max and only now and then is not what I would consider acceptable for any professional cleaner. Human nature does not do well without accountability. If you check your cameras or smart lock history, you might also notice a pattern of your cleaner rushing through the house. Here are some typical expectations and some math for you to think about. A typical 3-bedroom house has 4 beds. That's 4 flat sheets, 4 fitted, 8 to 16 pillowcases, and 6 to 8 bath towels, plus a couple dish towels, some washcloths. That's typically 4 to 5 loads of wash in a typical washing machine. Now, if your washing machine takes around 45 minutes to cycle, and if your dryer takes around 60 minutes to dry a full load, then you need to add 60 4 times plus 45 one time. So that's just around 5.5 hours for a full house of laundry if it's been used by 7 guests. So your cleaner should be there for around 5 hours at a minimum. And that's even if there's 2 or more people. So look at the cameras. Are there other people there? Look at the locks. Are they going multiple days? Are they actually spending the time that you would expect in order to get the house finished? Or are they rushing through? That would be an indication before you even interact with your cleaner to understand maybe where they're coming from. Maybe they are stretched really thin. Maybe they're cleaning the house next door as well, and they're trying to go back and forth doing laundry. Sometimes it's just too much for one person. Another interesting thing to look out for on cameras is children. Sometimes when things are stretched really thin, there's nobody to watch the kids. The cleaner still comes through. They just have to do daycare as well. So they end up bringing their children with them in order to be at your house, sometimes at 6 o'clock at night until 10 o'clock at night, just so they can clean it. Now, that's not a good thing for kids to be up that late, but it's something that we do in the industry in order to make things happen, in order to fulfill our commitments. But it's another sign that your cleaner might be getting stretched a little bit too thin. So, a good cleaner will photograph all the hidden areas of the house every time the house is serviced. So that way there's accountability, there's consistency, there's quality control, and there's evidence that you can use with those con artist guests. Eventually you're going to get one. The four things that you mentioned, it's possible that all four of these things were planted by the guests. Think about it. How hard would it be for a guest to drop a couple pills underneath the nightstand and snap a photo? Or a couple socks underneath the bed? Or the bedding might have had a hair on it because the guests losing their hair. It might not necessarily be, your cleaner or from the previous guest. Of course, we assume the customer's always right, but that's not always the case. Oh, and the log in the toilet, that's one of two things. The guest did it and is trying to con you, or the cleaner saw a bath that wasn't used in a basement that wasn't touched, and she went upstairs and spent all of her time up there, never returning to photograph the toilet as part of her photo routine. So, this brings me to your solution. Meet your cleaner in person. That way, you can be sure that nothing is lost in text messages or over the phone. This is far too sensitive of a matter to allow misinterpretation. You need to be able to hear in real time their reaction. You should be able to see their reaction as well. Number one, blame the guests. Blame the guest for planting the evidence. This will show her that you're on her side. It'll allow you to bring up these issues in a way that's focused on solutions for the future. And it'll make her feel like she's off the hook in case, maybe she didn't check that toilet. She'd be horrified. I know I would. If I cleaned a house and I had left a log in a toilet, I'd be horrified. And we don't want her assuming that the customer is right. You can just say, over the last year and a half, these different events have happened as an example. And we want to make sure that we're prepared for those things if it happens again. Every now and then, we're going to get a guest that's trying to get a credit. They don't really care about anything else. So if you explain this to her, um, then you're blaming the guest. And I would definitely make sure to leave out the information about this all being over the last 7 weeks, because that's going to make her think that there's a pattern. If she asks you directly when these were, just try and brush that off. That's not necessary information for your cleaner to hear. It's going to hurt her feelings. It's going to hurt the relationship. Just on that there is a pattern here. Secondly, we're focusing on the solution. So these photos are to prepare me when a guest pulls this stuff. That way I have time-stamped photos after each clean. So you're also going to need to make a list of what things that you want photographed underneath the bed, underneath the nightstand, underneath the couch. Pull the cushions off the couch, take a photo of the couch. Things like that. The dishwasher should be open, because why do you need a picture of a closed dishwasher? You can't see inside anyway. The refrigerator door should be open. Freezer, you get the idea. Underneath the kitchen sink, in the cabinet. All other places. You need all that evidence. You don't need to see a clean kitchen with a wide angle. That's not going to help you. What you need to see is the stuff that the guests are going to zoom in on. Like the counters have sand on them or something like that. So make a list of things that you want the photographs to be of. Now, there also is technology that can help you with this. So I am a property manager, and the property management software that we subscribe to and we use is HostAway. HostAway has tasks that you can create. It's got the opportunity for your cleaners to have an app that they can upload their fixtures into. That way you've got everything right there in one portal. I've also heard good things about Breezeway. I don't personally use them, but they do have a technology solution that's focused on this specific situation. And their pricing is per property. So if you've only got one or two properties, you're going to be spending a lot less than I would. And it really doesn't benefit to me to be at scale with this anyway. Now, third, offer to pay more because you want to always be generous with your service providers, just like you would like them to be generous with you. So you're also here asking for additional services. You're asking for photographs, and your cleaner's not used to doing this. So for extra work, like photographs, you're going to expect to pay more. So say something like, I thought things have gotten more expensive over the last couple of years. If we were a new customer, what would you be charging? Like that's a good way of kind of framing it. Like, hey, I know our fee that we've been paying is $200. I don't necessarily want that going up, but if we were new, what would we be paying? And that gives her the opportunity to just say, honestly, I would be pricing this house at 250 because now she has more experience. She might be better at her job, and she knows that that's what other houses this size are willing to pay. So that's your opportunity to turn around and say, I think it's definitely worth 250. Can we increase it to like 230 right now? And then 250 in the summertime, just because all these reservations that I've already booked, they're based on the $200 rate. And I want to make sure I recognize the value that we're adding to this. You get where I'm coming from? Now, some things not to do. Do not devise a weird scheme for sharing the profit. That is weird and complicated, and your cleaner is not used to getting paid on performance. They're used to getting paid by the cleaning job. They complete the cleaning job, they do a good job, they keep their job. They do a good job so that they will keep their job, not so they can get bonuses from you. Also, I work with a lot of people, and very few of them have the ability to delay gratification and to work harder because they're working towards a bonus. Almost every single one of them has an employee mindset where they think about the service I performed and what am I getting paid. They want to be guaranteed to get paid. They're not bonus motivated. There are rare people who are motivated and are going to work a little extra hard for that bonus. I'll let you figure that out if that's your cleaner or not, but it probably is not the time for you to offer some sort of profit sharing situation. It would align your interests with her, but that's very weird for you to enter into with a cleaning service. Just saying. Do not tell her you have been checking the cameras and locks or that you plan to start checking the cameras and locks. That's creepy. Nobody wants to think about how they're being spied on. Don't refer to things that they've said while they're in your house or in front of your house. Don't talk about their smoke breaks. Don't act like you are aware of anything that's happening on your cameras or with your smart lock or inside your home. They think that they're by themselves. Allow them the confidence that their private life is private and that while they're there cleaning, nobody's watching them. I can't tell you how many times that has messed up relationships between cleaners and owners. Um, Now, another thing, if I may get off topic, you know how I like to get off topic, right? In Pennsylvania, recording audio is illegal. Um, it's a two-party consent state, which means you have to notify people that they're being recorded audibly, not just by video, but by audio, and they have to um, they have to give permission for it. This is a problem when it comes to Ring cameras and Google cameras and a lot of the security cameras that people have out there. A lot of my clients come from New York and New Jersey, where it's a single party state and they can record in their house or outside their house if they want to. Now, I know what you're saying already in your head. Did he just say in your house? Actually, yeah. I had a cleaning customer, great guy, and he was very talented in his space. He's from New York. He's got cameras everywhere, in his home, outside his home, in his business, outside his business, everywhere. And it's protected him several times from liability, where an employee manufactured a slip and fall, and he was able to get out of the liability of paying that person workers' comp because he had on camera what they were devising to do and how they executed it. In Pennsylvania, that'll get you in jail. And it did happen because this is considered wiretapping when you record audio. So it's I don't know if it's a state or a federal crime. I'm not a lawyer, but this happened I think it's the Blue Ridge Winery. Don't quote me on that. It was like Mountain View Winery or Blue Ridge or something. There's a couple who owns the business. They had a camera in a break room for employees. The camera was only supposed to be recording visual recording only. But in a meeting with an employee who was a lazy employee, um, the owner referred to that employee something that they had said in confidence with another employee while they were on break in the break room. That made the employee think, how did they know that? And it very clearly went back to what had happened. So the owner actually was brought up on charges and was put in jail. It hit the Pocono record. I think they were in jail for like 6 or 10 months or something like that. But it's still something that they spent time behind bars for because they were clearly guilty of this. Because as soon as the police got there and investigated, they saw that this was being recorded, in fact. I'm pretty sure, like, just to make matters worse, they took all of their computers, all their cell phones, all their electronics. Like, they took everything off site, went through all of his information, saw all of his internet search history just because he was recording audio. So, back to the other story, right? So, I had a customer, and he had recording devices in his house. It's a short-term rental in his house is a clear violation. And I know you're saying this, it's a clear violation of the privacy policies of Airbnb. You may not have any recording devices recording the interior of the home. That counts even if your camera is outside and it can see through the windows. That counts if it's like mostly viewing outside, but you can also see the windows or in the windows. That counts if it's inside, like it was for him, where it's next to the fireplace and it's viewing the whole room. And this came up because he was talking to me and a lead cleaner about like a rate that she had agreed to. And he's like, I've got it on camera. And he sent me the video and it's got audio on it. And she did not consent to be recorded. Now, we're cool people. We didn't bring him up on charges or anything, but gosh, he didn't have any signs. It wasn't visually there and displayed. And we would have come across very credible to a judge that we were unaware that we were being recorded in that situation. Anyway, I wanted to respect his wishes and the way he runs his property. But at the same time, I made sure that everybody going into that property was aware they were being recorded visually and by audio because apparently he turns on his camera after the guests leave and he turns off his camera before the guests arrive. But while the cleaners are there, it's fair play. That he can watch. And he's like, Jeremiah, this is going to protect you as much as it protects me. This is going to relieve us from liability if they slip and fall. It happened before. Well, you can't do that in Pennsylvania. Also, I just philosophically, yeah, you have to trust people because going through life not trusting people, I think is worse than going through life not trusting people. Okay. I know that if I trust people, I'm going to be let down, but I think that the alternative is much worse, is just not trusting people and assuming that they're going to, do something eventually that is screw you over. So I choose to trust, and you don't have to be the same way. It's okay. Whatever, to each their own. But that's enough of getting off topic. So do not tell your cleaner that you're checking the cameras or locks. Don't imply that you are, or that you've been watching or monitoring her or her activities. Do not ask for excuses. Don't ask her why she's gotten busy or why that's a mystery that doesn't need to be solved. It's honestly, it's her business. It's none of your business. And I know that might be difficult to hear because it feels like she's part of the family. It feels like she's a partner, but you're technically not. And asking for excuses is focusing on the problem and not focusing on solutions. So my recommendation is focus on the solution, sympathize if she brings up an excuse. Lastly, make sure the house, not just the clean, is worth 5 stars. Happy guests try not to complain about pills or socks under the furniture. They're usually pretty forgiving, in my experience. So many rentals get pictures and then stop improving or they stop maintaining. So plan a paint job for your interior or exterior around every 4 years. I would say every 4 years is a good time to update. Also, use a professional decorator when you do that. And flooring, you should do hard flooring, not carpets, because it doesn't show the wear and tear quite as much. And You should use transition strips so that smaller sections of the floor can be replaced at a time. So each room can have a cut. Hopefully, you know what I'm talking about when I say transition strips. Each room can have a cut where the vinyl or the laminate meets the other. It should all be the same type of flooring, but if you put a cut right there at the doorway, it's pretty common. Nobody's going to notice it, but it means that you can replace just that one bedroom or just that hallway when when that starts to wear out. Instead, what people end up doing is they make it look really nice and they put continuous flooring from from this door through the doorways into the rooms, the hallway all looks continuous and it looks great. Your guests are not going to notice a difference if you put transition strips there. Also, you could start that way. It's a little bit more expensive and more difficult for the labor in order for them to go through those thresholds rather than stopping at the threshold and starting over again. So you'd save a little money by putting the transitions in. Theoretically, most flooring people will charge less if they can use transitions, and you're only going to be replacing it section by section anyway. So that's my recommendation with flooring: is just make it so that you can replace it in small sections. If your house is easier to repair, and it's more likely to get repaired. So test your kitchen, the drawers, and the doors. Test these things regularly, all of them. The slides, the hinges, things can be lubed, they can be replaced, they can be greased, and that has an impact on your guests that they weren't expecting it to be rough to pull out or that some drawers won't open. So you're going to want to check on those things over time and take care of it when it needs to be replaced. You can always replace a hinge. Like I said, you can always find copies. You just don't want to do a whole bunch of this stuff all at one time. Also, schedule a deep clean with your cleaner for the off season. They'll appreciate it because when things get a little bit slower, they still have work to do. The deep clean should, at a minimum, include things like high dusting. All those cobwebs need to come out. Window sashes. A lot of times they do not open up the blinds or the curtains. So you're going to want to make sure that they get the windows, the window sashes, dust everything. Flipping mattresses over. That's something that doesn't happen on a regular basis. So, but if you do it twice a year, I think that's perfectly fine. Cleaning on the baseboards. Some cleaners do this all the time, or some say they do it all the time, but is it always done? So cleaning those baseboard tops, cleaning the heaters also, using compressed air, things like that'll really help keep it less dusty in the house. Inside cabinets, pull everything out of the cabinets, all your, your blender, your toaster oven, your everything. Turn that toaster upside down, get all the crumbs out, so on and so forth. The thing about the cabinets, they really should be getting checked each time the house is cleaned because the last person who cleaned it wasn't a professional cleaner. Typically, your guests are expected to put the pots and pans and the dishes and things like that, the big things, away after they've hand washed them, but they're not professional cleaners. They don't care so much about what the next guest sees. So it is a good idea for your cleaner to take care of those things at least once a year. A couple times a year is, as I would say, a minimum. This is also a great time for them to clean the basement, for them to organize the cleaning closet. So you might have a bunch of sheets in there. Think about, some are king, some are queen, some are twin. Those things being organized and in their place, and having an inventory of what you have. A lot of times, your cleaners, when they get in a rush or when they're stretched thin, they're not doing those things. They're not organizing their cleaning closet, but they'll appreciate that you were willing to pay them to keep it organized. Don't forget about the yard and the siding. These are things that they get really dingy over time. Think about lighting. I know it bothers me because I am a photographer. The white balance. So what this means in most common terms is the soft white light versus the bright white light. People think of it like LED versus, incandescent. So like a fire is a warm glow. That's a soft white. Whereas the sun is a bright white and they have it in hertz or whatever. Anyway, you can tell when you're looking at two different things. So here's a light bulb, here's another light. One is a bright white, one is a soft white. Notice these things because some of your guests are going to notice these things. And it's also more of a psychological thing when the whites do not match. I'm all for Edison lights, and those are super soft. But I typically go with soft white everywhere. I have bulbs. Next is checking your appliances. You're going to want to make sure that your appliances are all working, that they're not broken, the handles are all on and secured, they're not flopping around. Things like that make a difference for your guests, and they don't show up in photos. Plan to redecorate. I would recommend making this coincide with with your paint job. So if you're going to plan the paint job for every 4 years, you should also budget for a professional to tell you what colors to use and how to redecorate the house. Don't necessarily go overboard. Don't do everything unless you really feel like it's necessary. But there's definitely a return on investment for a professional decorator who's good, creating a theme in your house between the wall colors, the accent walls, the flooring, the area rugs, and the stuff that goes on those walls. It makes a big difference. And lastly, don't sell. Just to avoid upset guests or confrontation with your cleaner, if you're selling as part of a strategy to get a better return on your equity, go ahead, sell. That's a good strategy. But don't avoid confrontation to the point where you're missing out on an income producing asset. It sounds like the property is doing fine for you. You should keep it. One of the biggest benefits of short-term rentals is personal use. But real estate is one of those businesses with like a 90% success rate. As long as you don't hop off the ride, there's going to be ups and downs. You're only going to get hurt if you get off the roller coaster. Also, for goodness sake, do not trust a realtor who tells you to sell, who listens to your story and tells you that you should probably just sell the house. You should trust the realtor who tells you to hang in there and gives you some solutions to make the problem better, because that's one that's not just looking for a commission. They actually want to see you succeed. So, Ravi, I think you and your wife are about to have a very productive conversation with your lovely cleaner. I think these suggestions will benefit you in your relationship with your service providers because a moderate level of confrontation is healthy for every relationship. Remember our application of the second law of thermodynamics, that nothing exists in constant static. It's either growing or it's dying. Things move towards entropy. Your rental is either improving or it's moving toward disorder and decay. It requires energy to keep it maintained, and it's just a law of the universe. So folks, if today's episode felt a little too familiar, you're not alone. These are the problems that no one talks about when they sell the dream of easy passive income, but they're exactly the problems that make or break your operation. If you've got a situation you want to share, then please email in your question or reach out if you'd be open to calling into the show. Your problem might be the next one that we break down, and chances are you'd help a lot of other hosts in the process too. If this episode helped you, share it with another host who's also in the trenches. That's how we make this industry better. I'd love to see you follow us on galvanizedmanagement.com, Facebook and YouTube, and that's under Galvanized Management, our TikTok at Galvanized Investments, or my blog on jeremiahknoll.com. Until next time, stay steady, keep learning, and keep building something real. This is STR Problems, Strong Solutions.